Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, September 8th, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Kim Mo-gan. Before we begin, these are the stories we're following at the top of the hour. South Korea reports more than 2,000 new COVID-19 cases Wednesday, surpassing the mark for the first time in a week. Concerns have been raised over a further spread as the nation observed eased distancing rules, which began this week. The Taliban has established a new interim government in Afghanistan with veteran members of group filling key positions. Mullah Muhammad Hassan Akhund, a longtime Taliban member, has been chosen as the new acting prime minister. And a remix of BTS's smash hit Butter has bounced back to #1 spot on this week's Billboard main singles chart. The song has now claimed the top spot for a 10th non-consecutive week. We begin with the COVID-19 situation. South Korea reported yet another high number of COVID-19 cases on Wednesday, with Wednesday's tallies usually the highest of the week due to decreased testing over the weekend. The majority of the cases came from Seoul and its surrounding areas, and authorities remain on alert, with no improvements seen despite social distancing measures in place for around 2 months. For the latest, we have our Kim Do-yeon at the News Center. Do-yeon.
Mo-yeon, South Korea's daily COVID-19 caseload for Wednesday stands at 2,050, of which all but 36 were locally transmitted. As you said, Wednesdays are usually the highest in terms of caseload, and for the past few Wednesdays, we've seen the figure go over the 2,000 mark, so it has been expected. Compared to last week, though, it's up 24. One thing to note is that Seoul and its surrounding regions have been under the highest level for social distancing, but the number of cases actually continues to be high. This is alarming for the authorities, as Chuseok holiday in late September will cause massive movement, with many citizens leaving the capital region to visit family members. That said, authorities will be trying to get a grip on the spread before the holidays. And the Delta variant is behind the high number of cases. According to health authorities, it now accounts for more than 97% of all infections in South Korea. Authorities studied nearly 3,000 random case samples from the first week of September and found that more than 2,800 of them were Delta strain. That's a 2.7% jump from samples the week before. Now, on the vaccination front, nearly 1.4 million doses of Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine arrived in South Korea late Tuesday night. This batch takes the total number Moderna doses received since August 23rd to 8.15 million. This is an increase on the 7 million doses the company had promised to deliver by early September. Wednesday will also be a big day for supplies, with Pfizer vaccines set to arrive, 3.4 million doses coming directly from the drug maker in the morning, as well as almost 1 million doses of Pfizer and Moderna vaccines from Romania that health authorities obtained through separate deals. With doses secured, authorities say that supplies will not be an issue in achieving the goal of administering first dose to 70% of the nation before the Chuseok holiday. Infection numbers remain high around the globe as the world struggles to contain the spread of COVID-19 amid the onslaught of the Delta variant. The United States saw its total tally surpass the 40 million mark, while the UK is considering so-called firebreak restrictions as a last resort. Our Han Sung-woo has the details.
Another grim milestone reached by the United States as the pandemic refuses to loosen its grip. As of Tuesday local time, the U.S. passed the 40 million mark in its total number of COVID-19 cases, according to data compiled by Johns Hopkins University, with over 4 million coming in the past 4 weeks. Just under 650,000 people have died from the virus since the start of the pandemic, with more than 32,000 new fatalities in the last month alone. It's prompted President Joe Biden to adopt a 6-pronged strategy aimed at fighting the spread of the highly contagious Delta variant and increasing vaccinations, which the White House says he'll be presenting on Thursday. The situation's not much better off in the UK, where on Tuesday local time, the BBC reported over 37,000 new coronavirus cases. Prioritizing the booster jab program for the elderly and most vulnerable, Vaccines Minister Nadim Zahawi did not deny that firebreak restrictions could be applied in October should COVID-19 hospitalizations remain high. This comes after a senior government scientist reportedly told the newspaper that the UK is set to enter an extended peak of infections that could force ministers to reintroduce restrictions over the school half-term period at the end of October. He added, though, that a full lockdown is unlikely. In response, the Department of Education has said, quote, "It is not true the government is planning a lockdown or firebreak around the October half-term." Meanwhile, in the Far East, Japan saw its daily virus tally return to the 10,000s after a slight dip the day before, according to an NHK report on Tuesday, local time. Han Seung-woo, Arirang News.
Staying with COVID-19, a recent poll shows 7 out of 10 people in South Korea agree with the government's COVID-19 exit strategy of shifting towards coexisting with the virus. They believe November, when 70% of the population is expected to be fully vaccinated, may be the right time to do so. Lee Kyung-eun reports.
There are growing calls among South Koreans for an exit strategy from COVID-19. According to the latest survey by health authorities, some 73% of respondents agree to the country shifting towards coexisting with the virus. More than the majority said late November would be the right time, when 70% of the population would have had their second doses. However, it turns out there's another thing to consider: the number of daily infections. The survey asked about the minimum number required for returning to normalcy, and fewer than 100 cases daily was the most answered at 42%. The level of infection has not been a critical factor guiding similar moves in other countries like the UK, which continues to see a surge in cases. But the survey shows that it will be in South Korea.
This shows that people here have different perceptions of returning to normalcy compared to in the UK and the US. This is something we should really take into consideration when actually come up with the measures.
Despite being cautious, the government is aiming to make the transition earlier than its initial target of November. According to KDC Chief Chung Eun-kyung during a parliamentary meeting on Tuesday, an exit plan could be adopted in late October after fully vaccinating 80% of the adult population and 90% of senior citizens. The announcement comes as vaccinations are rapidly picking up pace, with more than 1.3 million people, first and second round recipients combined, receiving their shots on Monday alone, the most in a single day so far. Vaccine supply won't be a problem either, with some 5.8 million doses of Moderna and Pfizer set to arrive by Wednesday. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
South Korea is currently giving Moderna and Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccines to adults under 50. But concerns have been raised amid reports of rare side effects of these so-called mRNA vaccines as inflammation of the heart. Our Choi Won-jung talked to an expert about the risks posed by getting these specific jabs.
South Korea has seen a few rare cases of people reporting heart issues after getting mRNA vaccines. And so far, 9 people in Korea have reported symptoms of the so-called myocarditis or pericarditis. Only 2 were acknowledged as actually being linked to their COVID-19 vaccination. But what exactly are these 2 heart inflammatory diseases? Pericarditis is the inflammation of the outer part of the heart, and myocarditis is the inflammation of the heart muscles. The severe chest pain, breathing difficulty, and a rare abnormal heartbeat are common symptoms in both cases. Experts think those pains are not easy to distinguish from general muscle pain, meaning it's necessary to get it checked.
Myocarditis pain is hard to differentiate from any other pain. Within usually 2 to 3 days or up to 2 weeks, people could get chest pain for no reason.
According to the US CDC, around 4.1 people out of every million people vaccinated show rare heart inflammation. The expert added that these 2 common heart diseases usually improve by themselves.
Pericarditis usually gets better by itself within 1 to 2 weeks, but still chest pain is a problem. It's not a dangerous disease, but people can feel uncomfortable, which can be treatable by medicine. Myocarditis improves after a certain period of time, but you need to be more careful with this one.
He said the benefits of a vaccination still outweigh the risk of side effects, stressing that there is a much higher chance of having heart problems if you catch COVID-19. The vaccination not only stops this from happening, but prevents other serious complications from COVID-19. 최원정, 아리랑 뉴스.
The foreign ministers of South Korea and China will meet next week in Seoul. This comes amid escalating tensions between China and the U.S. South Korea also wants to extract more support from Beijing to kickstart the stalled nuclear talks with North Korea. Our Yoon Jung-min reports.
China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi will be coming to Seoul next week for talks with his South Korean counterpart Chung Eui-yong. Seoul's foreign ministry says they will sit down for talks next Wednesday, which will be their first face-to-face meeting in 5 months.
We expect the meeting to be a milestone in seeking various paths for the future-oriented development of bilateral ties ahead of next year's 30th anniversary of South Korea-China diplomatic relations.
The agenda includes bilateral issues, Korean Peninsula affairs, as well as regional and global issues. They are likely to discuss North Korea issues, especially considering reports that the North may have restarted its main nuclear reactor used to produce atomic bombs. The agenda also includes ways to bolster South Korea-China relations, marking 3 decades of diplomatic ties. During his visit, there will be a committee meeting to promote Seoul-Beijing exchanges in the humanities as the two countries celebrate a year of cultural exchanges until 2022. The Chinese foreign minister last came to Seoul some 10 months ago and has been visiting South Korea every year since 2019. As the U.S.-China rivalry intensifies, Beijing is apparently looking to prevent other countries getting too close to the U.S. Recently, the U.S. House of Representatives suggested including South Korea in its Five Eyes intel sharing program, possibly to rein in the rise of Russia and China.
Our government consistently seeks to develop a harmonious South Korea-China relationship based on a firm South Korea-U.S. relationship.
It has not been announced, but there is a possibility that Wang makes a courtesy call on President Moon Jae-in. The Chinese diplomat could request cooperation on the Beijing Winter Olympics slated for next February. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
After a temporary delay, the Taliban has established a new interim government in Afghanistan, with the group's veteran members filling the key positions. The Taliban's supreme leader ordered them to govern under Sharia law. Choi Min-jung with this report.
The Taliban has announced an interim government for Afghanistan, with Taliban veterans appointed to top positions.
The Islamic Emirate decided to appoint and announce an acting cabinet to advance important matters. We must say that the officials for the remaining ministries, departments, and institutions will be introduced after further investigation.
Speaking at a press briefing on Tuesday, the Taliban's chief spokesman revealed that Mullah Muhammad Hassan Akhund would be installed as the new acting prime minister. He is a longtime Taliban member and was a close aide to the Taliban's late founder, Mullah Omar. Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, the head of the group's political office, will serve as the acting deputy prime minister. Despite a promise of an inclusive government, the new cabinet is dominated by all male Taliban seniors, many of whom are on the UN sanctions list. The Taliban's secretive supreme leader has told the newly appointed government to uphold Sharia law. In a statement, Habatullah Akhundzada said that the new leadership will work hard under Islamic rule, ensuring lasting peace, prosperity, and development. He added that people should not try to leave the country. Yet Afghans were reportedly killed and wounded during a protest in Herat on Tuesday. According to AFP, 2 people were shot dead and 8 wounded. This comes as small demonstrations broke out in cities mostly led by Afghan women. Women have stepped up their fight for rights in recent days, with hundreds taking to the streets demanding representation in the new government. The Taliban have pledged to govern under a more moderate rule, but many Afghans remain skeptical of the promise. Choi Min-dong, Arirang News.
The International Atomic Energy Agency on Tuesday, Australia local time, reported that Iran has continued to increase its stockpile of highly enriched uranium in violation of an international accord designed to prevent Tehran from developing a nuclear bomb. The UN atomic watchdog also told member states that its monitoring activities have been, quote, seriously undermined since February after Iran refused to let inspectors access surveillance equipment. The agency was granted access this month to 4 cameras at one site, but said that 2 were destroyed or severely damaged. Mexico's Supreme Court has ruled that imposing penalties for abortion is unconstitutional. The court ruling came unanimously on Tuesday, signaling a historic breakthrough for women's rights. Although most of the nation will still follow tough measures, the move sets a course for the decriminalization of abortion across the country. The Mexican ruling is in stark contrast to a decision made in the U.S. state of Texas last week, where a strict anti-abortion rule was introduced, banning abortions after the 6th week of pregnancy. Watchers say Mexico's ruling may potentially open another door for women in Texas who are seeking abortions. South Korea's major conglomerates are launching a new hydrogen consultative body. According to industry sources, leaders of the country's 10 largest groups, including Hyundai Motor Group, SK Group, and POSCO, are gathering on Wednesday at the H2 Business Summit, where they will establish a Korean Hydrogen Council. They will attend the H2 Mobility Plus Energy Show together, which is South Korea's biggest hydrogen industry exhibition. This consultative body aims to stimulate corporate-level investments in hydrogen businesses through regular meetings and forums. It also plans to develop and expand value chains in the industry and contribute to South Korea's goal of achieving carbon neutrality. BTS has reclaimed the top spot on the Billboard Hot 100 chart with a remix of the group's megahit Butter, this version featuring an American rapper. With this, the song has been #1 in the U.S. for a 10th non-consecutive week. Our Kim Hyo-san with the details.
A remix of BTS smash hit Butter has bounced back to the #1 spot on this week's Billboard May Singles chart. The remix featuring Megan Thee Stallion gave a further boost to BTS' record-breaking track. With this, the song has claimed the top spot for a 10th non-consecutive week. According to Billboard, only 40 songs in the 63-year history of the Hot 100 chart have been at the summit for over 10 weeks. The group's second English-language single, Butter, made its debut at #1 in May and spent 9 consecutive weeks atop the chart, after which it dropped to the 4th, 7th, and 8th places in recent weeks. The Billboard Hot 100 chart is based on U.S. streaming, radio airplays, and sales. The collaboration between the U.S. rapper and BTS comes after she filed a petition in a Texas court asking for emergency relief, saying her label refused to approve the release of the remix. She reportedly said that a collaboration with BTS, a group with millions of fans around the world, would help her become more well-known outside the U.S.
There will be more world-renowned artists willing to cooperate with BTS in the future, which will help the group expand its fan base even further.
With the remix, Butter finishes summer at the same spot at which it started summer, #1 in the U.S. Kim Hyo-san, Arirang News.
South Korea's national football team beat Lebanon 1-0 Tuesday evening in a World Cup qualifier in Suwon. The game's only goal came courtesy of Kwon Jang-hoon in the 60th minute. South Korea was without its star Son Heung-min, who had earlier picked up a calf injury in training. South Korea has 4 points from its first 2 final round qualifiers for the 2022 World Cup.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. We start off in Afghanistan, where the country is facing the collapse of basic services, with food and other aid running out. A statement from the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs on Tuesday said millions of Afghans are in need of food aid and health assistance and urged donors to give more ahead of an international aid conference for Afghanistan on September 13th. According to the UN agency, around $600 million is needed to fund humanitarian efforts for 11 million people for the remainder of the year, amid warnings of drought and starvation. The dire need for food and basic essentials has become more apparent as many key donors, including the EU and the World Bank, have suspended their aid programs following the Taliban's takeover of the country last month. This has led to spiraling food prices, with uncertainty over how the Taliban will provide services to an impoverished and largely rural population. The issue of Afghan aid will also be discussed next week at a ministerial meeting in Geneva led by UN Chief Antonio Guterres. Moving on over to Bolivia, at least 20 people were killed and several seriously injured after a passenger bus lost control and overturned on a highway on Monday. According to authorities, the bus was carrying 30 passengers at the time of the accident before falling 300 meters into a ravine on the Morashara Highway. Local media reports say 3 children are among the fatalities. Rescue workers, as well as locals, helped to rescue survivors and recover the bodies of those killed. Road accidents are common in Bolivia, where driving conditions are often precarious due to the lack of funding for the country's infrastructure. And staying in South America, El Salvador became the first country to accept Bitcoin as legal tender on Tuesday, after President Nayib Bukele pushed for the adoption of the cryptocurrency. Bukele says using Bitcoin will help Salvadorians save $400 million a year on commissions for remittances, while also giving access to financial services to those without bank accounts. However, the latest move was met with both praise and criticism from citizens.
It is something we had never seen before. Today we are receiving cryptocurrency, and it's a great opportunity. This is very important for all Salvadorans. It is necessary to get the app.
We don't understand why the president decided to make this law, because this only benefits those who have higher incomes than the Salvadorian population does. Those who have access to technology, to internet. Most people in El Salvador don't have that.
Watchers also say the poorest may struggle to access the technology needed to make Bitcoin work in the country, while others say that the move may fuel money laundering and financial instability. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Good morning. We had murky skies and light drizzle to start the day in the capital, but the skies are clearing. But eastern regions will receive more rain. In fact, the Gyeongsangdo provinces could see showers through tonight, so please keep an umbrella handy if you're there. Most regions will see highs in the upper 20s today, ranging from 27 to 29 degrees Celsius. Seoul will be heating up to 28 degrees, which is about 7 degrees higher than yesterday under mostly blue skies. Pleasant weather conditions will dominate most regions, and the highs will stay on the warmer side in the capital, nearing 30 degrees Celsius. Well, just a heads up, 2 storms have formed in the West Pacific, and they could bring strong winds and heavy rain to portions of East Asia over the next several days. Well, for now, the chances they could affect Korean Peninsula are slim, but things can change quickly. But we'll be sure to keep you updated. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that will do it for us at this hour on Arirang News. We'll be back with our next newscast at noon Korea time. Thank you for watching.
Arirang TV, the first broadcast station